Are you sick of running a pass and flipping up your hood at the end of it to see everything just look gray and blown out? What the heck is going on? Today, I'm going to show you what most people think is the problem, but what actually is going to make the difference to get you dimes that shine. So let's take a look at a pass here and break down what we see. Obviously, this does not look like what we want it to look like. What we see here, all this gray stuff that looks gross, is oxide. This is a layer of material that has formed and covered our weld as a result of our atmosphere reacting with the hot surface or weld area. So to put it simply, things have gotten too hot and had a reaction that creates a finish that's going to look gray and dull. Now, there's a lot of different circumstances that can cause this to happen, but here is the mistake that a lot of people make when trying to figure out what the problem was and what's gonna fix it. There's a common misunderstanding, and it's understandable, I get it, but the misunderstanding is that the gas supply, method of gas supply, is the reason that this is happening. Gray oxide on the weld that we see here isn't the problem. The gray oxide we see here is a result of the problem. Now, there are some gear circumstances which will get us some improvement with this factor, but it's not taking care of the root issue. There is a different part of the equation that's going off track, and it's not the gas. And that factor is, you hear me talk about it on my channel, excessive heat input. Check this out, look at this photo here. We see one thing that is definitely gonna tell us exactly what is happening. And it's not exactly the gray oxide that's gonna do that. See this whole area I have highlighted here? This is called the heat affected zone. We talk about this all the time on my channel. All the ARC heads who watch the show every week have to hear this really often, I'm sorry. But we need to make it clear to the people who don't understand this yet. See how excessively big this heat affected zone is? Take a look at a photo here which has stayed a little bit more in control. We see a heat affected zone which is much smaller. One of the biggest things I teach when working with somebody who is new to this type of metal is how to read this detail. I use reading a heat affected zone as direct feedback, so I can see what happened, what I can do differently, and how I can do it better next time. Now again, as we see another example of excessive heat input, see how far the heat affected zone reaches out? Basically what has happened here is obviously this has got excessively hot, but not specifically restricted to the weld zone. The entire area of the parent or base material is now what is overheating. Now this is what I talk about when I say that gas doesn't really do much in this situation. When you finish a pass and it's glowing crazy red hot like this is here, you would have to flood this with an extreme amount of gas for an extremely long amount of time. Even doing so, you would still have some kind of oxide forming on the backside because of how hot this thing has gotten. Now, obviously there is such things as trailing gas setups, purge chambers, which will completely eliminate our atmosphere, or something as ridiculous as a giant size 58 weld cup. But all of us are not going to be spending the money to work with these types of setups, buying expensive torch stuff, or using tons of gas. What we are going to do instead is mitigate our heat affected zone. So overall our heat input is going to be much lower. So now our gas has a better chance of doing its job properly. This is where gas comes in. This is the main conception that happens a lot with this type of stuff. People see nice shiny welds and assume it has to do with an awesome torch or cup setup like this. Or aside from that, some other type of way that's improving the gas quality or gas flow to a weld area. Like I said, this is gonna have some impact on how it's going, but this extra stuff is only meant to complement something that's already happening. I'll tell you right now, if you see a mess like this is not a problem with setup or gas supply. This is a technique problem that you can fix by paying attention to these details. What we're gonna do is focus on the overall width of a pass. We're gonna make sure that we do not let things get too wide, which would obviously in turn overheat the base material. We also wanna make sure that we are using adequate reinforcement or filler material. There's lots of different ways that somebody can do this. I actually have a bit of a special technique I've shared a couple times on my channel, and that technique I call double tapping. This is a technique that directly affects us being able to keep our heat affected zone small, yet still giving it adequate heat for proper penetration, but as well, the double tapping technique allows us to give adequate reinforcement as well. What I'm doing here is controlling all of these details, which contribute to keeping a smaller heat affected zone, because when things are less hot, and you can usually see this at the end of a pass when things are glowing red hot, your gas will have a much easier time of covering your weld area and keeping things oxide free. Do you see what I'm trying to describe here? Overall control of heat input is #1 priority with me. And then like I said, our gas has a much easier time taking care of what it's supposed to do. How about we shake things up a little bit here? Check this out. This is a completely basic setup. This is a diffuser lens instead of a gas lens and a basic cup. I have the same tungsten in the torch. My settings are virtually the same for what I would use for a bigger cup. Let's take a look at what this looks like when I finish this pass here. See that? Sure, there may still be some colors here and there, which are the beginnings of excessive oxide, but overall, we do not see a complete covering of oxide, or for that matter, anything gray or dull looking at all. This is one of the cheapest setups you can get for your torch. It comes stock with most stuff that you buy. There's just basic gear involved here. All that it is a matter of delivering clean gas and providing a proper environment where that clean gas can do its job properly. The idea is to learn how to read our heat affected zone. Again, we take a look at another bogus one here. Now, compared to this one here, look at the difference between the two. Again, this difference is pretty obvious. Obviously, I have better gear and nice stuff, and it's gonna do its job more efficiently and consistently, but for the most part, what I'm just trying to do here is show people that in most circumstances, this is a technique-based problem, not a problem of not having fancy gear. Again, having this gray oxide on stuff is not the problem. It's a result of the problem. I work with students all over the world now, and these students have setups all across the board. Some of these setups are super nice and awesome, but some of them, well, let's just say they're not the most high-tech setups. But I get all of these people up and running. We focus closely on the details of technique and understanding why things are happening. Like I said, nice gear is awesome. You will find benefits to using it for sure, and it's nice to have options for different scenarios where you might be using it. But let's focus on the fundamental details of what's happening and why it's happening. I talked about the subject of double tapping. This is absolutely something that's been drastically important to me learning how to control things at a higher level and using this technique as a way to influence my heat input directly. This episode is right here. It's in the description below, and it goes into detail about this exact subject. Watch that episode if you want more information on that technique. Go out today and do a random act of kindness for a stranger. If you're an arc head who watches the show every week, leave a dime in the comment. I love seeing those. For Pacific Arc TIG Welding, my name is Dusty. Fill and chill. We will talk soon. Peace.